Coming up today in the Innovation Sandbox, we're talking about cybersecurity. Organizations are spending millions on it, but breaches keep on happening. Why is that? And how can you better protect your company? We'll discuss with the experts live in 5 seconds. So grab your shovel and let's go innovate. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Prolifics Innovation Sandbox. I'm your host, Kirsten Craft. Today, we're exploring the challenge of cybersecurity. Why is it so hard? And what are some approaches to consider to make it easier and better at the same time? Now, first, a quick note about the title of today's show, Top Guns of Cybersecurity. If you are a security professional, you probably have a fair amount of stress. You know how important your job is. And are you under attack? Probably 24/7, right? They're trying to take you by surprise. So you're just like a fighter pilot, right? So we tried to get Tom Cruise for this episode, but unfortunately he was busy. But instead, I'm happy to welcome a couple of security experts for today's conversation. Joining us are Mark Newman, he's Technical Executive in Security at IBM, and Mike Hahn, he's the Head of Security for Prolifics. Welcome to you guys, Mark and Mike.
Thank you.
Great.
Where's your jackets, man? All right, so let's start with some quick introductions. Mark, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten. I am excited to be part of this great panel event today, so thanks for having me. I've been with IBM for 34 years, and I specialize in IBM's Cloud Pak for Security Unified Platform. I help customers modernize their security operations centers to prepare them for all the different threats and attacks that we're going to talk about today.
Fantastic. Mike, your turn. Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, thank you as well for having me here. For the last 20 plus years, I've been in the security field as a security advisor, architect, and consultant to many of the Fortune global organizations that you've probably heard about on TV or actually work with every day. And I'm excited to talk about security and how companies like ours and IBM's can help your company succeed in the security world.
All right, fantastic. Now, to everyone listening, we will have Q&A at the end of today's show, like we always do, but I'm sure that you're going to be thinking about questions as we go along. So please go ahead and put those questions into the live chat as you think of them. Now, as a reminder, that live chat window, it should be on the right or the bottom of your screen. All right, guys, let's start with the problem space. Mark, I'm going to start with you. So we all watch the news, right? And I got to tell you, it feels like the intensity of security attacks has really ramped up over the past couple of years. The sophistication of the attacks and also the severity of the impact that they're having. Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, in fact, companies are being attacked more every day, like you just said. I mean, here's an example. Like when SolarWinds came out, it came out of nowhere. And companies didn't even know to look for it until they read about it either on the internet or the news or they heard about it from another company. And really, if you wait till then, it's too late. And again, so you need to be on top of this. The challenge, though, for companies is there's too many threats with too many indicators that they need to look for. And all of their data needs to be looked at to see if they're effective. They just can't keep up. And that's really where security automation that we're talking about today is going to come in. And you also need what's called a federated search. I had a chance to present with Forrester. And companies really need to be able to look across all of their data to see, are they being attacked, what are those indicators, and what they need. And small or large companies, the weakest link really I see are some of their employees. They're not helping the security of their company. So really, those are the things that companies need to look more at their data across the enterprise and look at their risky users to see what's going on.
Okay. Now, you mentioned SolarWinds. For folks, I'm sure that a lot of folks that are watching this are familiar with that, but can you just give a very short description of what happened there?
Sure. Really what it was, SolarWinds is a supply chain type solution. And when they did an update to everyone's applications, automatically all this attack information hit their company. So just because they were using some of those products, and they actually called it Sunburst as the code name, They actually uploaded their application, and all of a sudden the malware was inside all these companies, and they didn't even know it. So again, they didn't know what to look for. They didn't have an automated way to do this threat hunting, and it caused lots of damage across many different companies that were using that technology.
Wow. So that was really an extreme and unusual type of case, but it's very scary. So now also one of the ones that we had talked about before was Colonial Pipeline, of course, which I know has been in the news recently. Can you just give us a quick refresher on kind of what happened there?
Sure. I mean, Colonial Pipeline was really a ransomware type thing. And what happened was companies are really reliant on users and their passwords. And what happened was somehow one of their admin's passwords got leaked out into the dark web. People used that password now to gain access and basically encrypted all their data and held them for ransom. So really what companies need to start looking at is more like, we call this zero trust. We don't trust anybody, employee, customer. We protect all the data with some sort of two-formative factor. And again, that password being leaked to the dark web, easily accessible to the power company, really cause them damage. And again, companies need to look at doing some zero trust type stuff to protect them from such an easy hack.
Okay. All right. So Mike, let me go over to you. Those companies we just talked about, those are really big companies. You would really expect for them to kind of have this under control. So it's kind of shocking to hear that. And you've got a really deep consulting background, right? You just said you've worked with a lot of different large companies. What are you seeing out there in terms of common themes on why some of these things happen?
Well, unfortunately, something that's a regular occurrence is policy adherence. Most organizations have a strategic and tactical plan, as well as policy procedures and what have you in place. Unfortunately, they're not always followed, and things lapse, and people don't notice what's going on. Any one of those attacks that we just talked about, ransomware in particular, would have given off signatures that are happening in the environment. If you're not paying attention, or if you don't know to pay attention, you're going to be left out in the cold, and unfortunately, you're going to have to recover from a ransomware or an attack that, unfortunately, again, you may have not followed those policies and procedures, and there may not be any coming back.
Yeah. Okay, that's I mean, really scary times. I can't imagine being a security professional in these times with all of that happening. You know, how do you watch everything that you can't even see? The stress level of a CISO, I can't imagine. It's got to be through the roof. So let's pivot just a little bit. Let's talk about how companies are reacting to what's happening in the market right now. And you know, what are they doing to protect themselves specifically? So Mark, I'm going to go back to you. As you are working with large customers like this, where do you see them focus their efforts so that they can avoid being the next Colonial Pipeline or SolarWinds? Yeah,
so if you kind of go off what Mike was just talking about is, you know, you have to look for these indicators of compromise. A lot of people don't know, but SolarWinds, there's 147 indicators of compromise, IP addresses, URLs, and stuff like that companies should have been looking for in all of their data to see if they've been affected. So what companies are starting to do now is they're starting to use what I called earlier a federated search. We actually will feed into some security tools threat feeds. So IBM X-Force Exchange, Alien Vault, there's a bunch of companies that say, hey, we research all these latest threats. We know the 147 indicators you should be looking for, and then we automate that search so your team doesn't waste time doing it. It's kind of like the old virus scans on computers. You know, we don't actually every day click that button. We would like to look for those indicators for you automatically across that your organization. And then the one kind of add to that, and something a little bit of homework for all the audience here, look up the word Kestrel. IBM has open sourced, and we announced at one of the security conferences just last month, something called a threat hunting language. This is going to be game-changing now to help companies look for these threats that Mike were talking about and these indicators. What this lets you do now is you can now analyze and discover by typing in query strings, look at all your data, and it's aided by machine learning and analytics to let you know what's happening in your company and find these threats quickly. So again, look up Kestrel from IBM. It's an open source product, and it's really going to change how companies look for these kind of things. Okay. So I have to ask you, you just mentioned this new word. Can you spell that? Sure thing, I can spell that. It is Kestrel. All right. All right. A little bit of homework for the audience. We're coming into this session today. Homework assignment. Perfect.
So, it's interesting as we look at security. I think when we were talking earlier, we were talking about the backup recovery isn't really enough. A lot of companies feel like they've got that business continuity and things like that, but really it's about starting to be forward looking and watching real time what's actually happening out there. Fascinating. So, Mark, let me ask you another question. Are you seeing any examples of where a company's really getting it right? Kind of a shining example where they're doing the right thing to focus on security?
Yeah, and we kind of pivot off the power company mentioned earlier, but another power company that I was looking at, they had a huge Internet of Things power grid. All of this data in their power grid was not being looked at, and that's just leaving you open to a threat. So companies now are really implementing, and again, another homework assignment, look at what is going to be your federated search. What I mean is, how would you look at terabytes of Internet of Things data in your company to see if a threat is there? What you need is a federated search engine to do that. So again, as you start looking at it, companies that are implementing federated search, first thing, they're being proactive by looking at not just some of their data ingested into their SIM tool, their security tool, but looking at all of their data real time. The second one, and again, this is what Colonial should have done, was really, we call it zero trust. And if you've never heard the word zero trust, please get with your Prolifics people. They can help you do this. Zero trust says we don't trust anybody to log in and look at anything in the company. We'll do some sort of two-form authentication. We'll either text you to make sure that's you. We'll make you do some sort of biometric fingerprint or face ID or something. But that way you're always protected. And Colonial Pipe, no matter how many backups they would have done, would never have had the problem if they would have done something with zero trust. So again, every modern SOC now and company needs to be doing things like federated search and zero trust.
Now, that IoT thing you mentioned is fascinating and frightening all at the same time, because IoT devices are just proliferating out there, right? And
totally.
And the data coming back from them, I mean, if you think about new endpoints, new entry points for hackers, that's, especially as you think about our utilities. So it's great to hear that there's a utility that's all over that, and let's really hope that a lot of them do. So let me pivot over to Mike in terms of what you're seeing there. Some of the concepts that Mark was just talking about, are many companies actually doing these things, or is it kind of the leaders? Where are we kind of in that adoption cycle?
Some are, and some are going to be leaders in this space. And the unfortunate part is you're never going to know because they weren't in the news, so you get any update on that. To dovetail on one of the things we talked about, one of the organizations that did suffer a ransomware, they did do some of the things right. They did a backup. They offsited. They 3-2-1 like they were supposed to on their backups. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything to put the data back onto. There was no bare metal bring back to be able to say, okay, I have a desktop, I have a server, let me put the data on it. And they suffered because of it.
Wow. Okay, so I want to pivot just a little bit again. So Mark, you talked about that power company. You talked about how they're using automation to kind of pull needles out of their data haystack, right, if you will. You also mentioned the concept of automation tools. And I understand that there's a lot of security automation tools out there. So Mike, can you give us a sense for the different types of security automation tools that are out there in the market today?
Well, there's a plethora of tools out there that do some sort of automatically or automation type work, if you will. We have SIMs, we have firewalls, we have IDS, and every one of them has probably been sold to every one of us on the phone or on the video, I'm sorry, as the silver bullet. And unfortunately, they only can do what they're told to do, and they only do it within the realm of their possibility. So when you have a SIM, it's going to collect those logs only if you set them up. It's only going to tell you what you fed to it. So you might be left on the wayside if you aren't constantly configuring, looking back, and prioritizing what you're getting out of these information systems.
Okay. So you mentioned SIM. What are some of the other types of tools that are out there in the market?
Well, something that I've been very interested in, and Mark talked about it, was security automation. Something that can be the wingman for you, so to speak, that can be there when you're not, vacations, shift change, or to assist that poor SOC analyst that's been there for 12 hours already and is not able to coherently take care of a risk that they see popping up. And let's face it, automation can do exactly what it's told, but it can do it in a fraction of a time that you can.
Okay. So, so let's drill down into that wingman analogy a little bit, because really there's so many options of different tools out there in the marketplace today. SIM is one example. There's a lot of other different types of tools. And of course, the brands and the products across all those different categories is just really overwhelming. So, how do you choose what to use, and how do you make sure you don't have a gap somewhere, that wingman is really able to look at everything?
Well, that in itself is a big issue. Gap analysis is something that companies may fall down on, but it's something that you have to repeatedly do. The market is going to change, your enterprise is going to change, and let's face it, threat actors pop up almost every day. You can purchase on the dark web for $1,000 username and passwords just to be able to log into a company, and it's getting easier every day. And what do you do?
Yeah. Okay, so Mark, let's go over to you for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about that automation topic a bit more. So again, with all these different types of tools, you got to figure out how do you stitch all this together, right? So you have an end-to-end, so you don't have any gaps anywhere, you don't have a lot of cracks coming in. So let's take a step back and dream a little bit. Can you walk us through maybe an ideal scenario where automation is that perfect ideal security wingman?
Yeah, it's great because customers need this, and you talk about dreaming, but you need the art of the possible. What should a modern security organization have? Well, it starts off what I call with threat feeds and user behavior analytics data coming in from many different sources. So you have what you're looking for, either known threats or user behavior. From there, then, you need to create a case or a place where that team now takes what they've learned and scans all the data. And if they find something with either a user did or with an indicator from a threat feed, you then kick off, we like the word playbooks. Basically, it's a set of tasks and integrations that say, if malware comes in and a user is affected, what you might want to do is a couple things. Maybe block the attacker at the firewall automatically using some sort of workflow. The next thing you might want to do is remove that person's machine that was affected from the network. And then we actually say, well, let's open up a service now to get to start reloading that machine as soon as possible. And when I work with customers, normally what happens is if someone's machine gets affected by malware, they clicked on an email or something, guess what happens? 50 other people now got sent that email. So you need an automated wingman or someone to help you now remove all of those forwarded emails inside your company by deleting them from the Office 365 inboxes of every employee that has the same one so it doesn't keep spreading. And all of this needs to be done in an automated way because you don't have enough Top Gun pilots. There's just not enough security people. So you need in your SOC a way to automate everything I just said. And it really is a dream or a perfect state, but you can do that today.
Okay. So if I'm going to put in a nutshell, kind of a layman's terms nutshell, what you just said, it's really about that end-to-end process, starting with identifying the security threats, being able to watch everything all at once, being able to digest what are the things that are important that need to be acted on, and then feed what are the actions specifically that need to be taken. And in some cases, go ahead and do those actions without actually requiring a person. Is that?
You said it much more eloquently than I did. Great. Yes, that's perfectly.
You gave some great technical details, and I know that that's what folks on the phone or on the video are looking for. I've just got to digest it for myself. Thank you. Okay, so, all right, so Mark, you've been very good through this whole show, even though I know you've been dying to say it. So I'm going to go ahead and say it for you. IBM Cloud Pak for Security. IBM Cloud Pak for Security. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to give a brief pitch right now. If you can tell us at a high level, why is this so great compared to the other options in the market and some of the cool features that it's got?
Sure. In fact, that scenario that you and I just went through, that dream scenario, we are delivering that today with IBM Cloud Pak for Security. It's going to give companies like the ones on the call today complete access and insight into what's happening in their company, leveraging automation to make more informed risk-based analytics and decisions across their environment. It's got a federated search that we talked about. It's got the user behavior analytics to find out that, you know what, Mike logged on to 7 different countries in the last hour. That's impossible travel. We'll let you know that happened. And we use artificial intelligence with this automation to really do things like build you an attack graph. So every company, when the attack happens, you figure out It started on this machine. It went from Mike. It jumped over to Kirsten, and then it went to this server. That's a manual process. Thing of the past with CloudPack, artificial intelligence and automation. We build that for you. And all of it's from a single pane of glass. So it's an exciting new product that we have, and I'm excited to talk about it. But that's what it is.
Okay.
If I could jump in for a second.
Yeah.
Just to dovetail on what you said, when you talk about malware coming onto a computer and it's spreading, unfortunately, when a SOC sees that, you lose hours of time if you don't have some sort of automation to grab that. And by the time first level, second level, third level makes the decision on what to do, you could have lost the entire environment. So automation is definitely the way to go.
Okay. Well, so Mike, my next question is for you. So first of all, what Mark just described sounds really awesome. And
Yes.
with that kind of automation, maybe I could actually be a Top Gun security professional.
Yes.
Okay, I'm kidding, totally kidding. But if I were a security professional with that kind of automation, should I be worried about my job? Would my company still need me? Mike, why don't you take that?
Absolutely not, because some of the smallest, most time-consuming things this automation can take care of. Locking out accounts, doing research on things, giving you specialized information from data feeds that it's going to get from X-Force. And it frees all of the individuals up in the cybersecurity world to be able to move on to the things that matter. Policy adjustments, education, patching, all of the things that can safeguard you from some of these things happening to you and not be mired in reams and reams of research.
Okay.
And Mike, if I can just add to that, if you don't mind me jumping in here real quick, is you're totally right. The mundane part of security is not fun. And they spend a lot of time, just like Mike said, going through that, building those attack graphs by hand. If we automate that, now you might think this is weird, but the fun part of the job is the threat hunting, using our new threat hunting language. That's the fun and valuable part for companies. And that's what CloudPack Security and this automation, if you look at it, is going to start to do for you. Free you up to do the fun, but more importantly, the really necessary threat hunting inside your company.
The reason you want the security in the first place.
Exactly. You want the fun part for sure. Okay, so finally, let's talk briefly about the cost impact of security decisions. So I'm not talking about the ransom, right, that was rumored that Colonial paid. At a technical level, I understand that there can be hidden costs in how security is handled, especially with so many companies moving workloads into cloud architecture. So Mark, I want for you to speak to this. Keep it brief if you can, because we do need to run on to Q&A.
Real quick. I happen to work with a company, the financial company on the East Coast. They were paying $1 million a year to ingest the logs into their security tools just so they could look at them. And they started realizing as they're moving to the cloud that, Amazon charges them to export that data, and then their security tools were charging them to import it. They're paying twice. And they said their cost to ingest their logs is going to go from $1 million to $2 million in 3 years. So all of a sudden you realize you can't keep going like that. So looking at ways to do federated searches like CloudPack does, connecting to the data real time without moving it all around is really going to be game changing in the future. Fantastic.
All right, so to our audience, I want to know if you guys want to actually experience this, right? So we are actually Prolifics is hosting a live interactive walkthrough of how to use automation, like what Mark was talking about, to more efficiently detect and respond to security breaches. Because it's interactive, we do have a limited number of spots, but you can request an invitation. It's in just a couple of weeks. It's on Wednesday, August 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we would love to have you. There should be a link in the chat to request an invitation. I've actually been through one, and it's very cool. They simulate an actual breach scenario, and you act out the steps with your fellow participants. So be sure to check that out if it's something of interest to you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Q&A. Again, if you've got a question, just go ahead and type that into the live chat. It's going to be on the right or the bottom of your screen. So let's open that up and see what we've got here. All right, I see the cyber range. All right, here we go. Okay, so here's a good one. What is the first step to improving your security posture if you have a lot of remote workers? Big topic in COVID. So Mike, let me point that one over to you.
So remote work brings a very different sort of scenario. When you're in the office, you're protected by the firewall. You have all of the full power network capabilities protecting you. Once you go home, you sort of are out in the wild, if you will. You're using this PC not protected. There's no real firewall and IDS in the way until you come onto the VPN. When you're using your laptop or computer to send email, surf the net, you're very susceptible to what happens. And unfortunately, once you log onto the VPN, anything that you may have done or may have picked up along the way is going to be transmitted into that network. So different things such as enhanced visibility, more policy, and typically user education is key to these sort of things.
Okay. So I really like this question that just came in. Mark, I'll point this one over to you. When you have budget concerns, what is the most important security measure to take?
That's an interesting question. Let me think on that one. I'd say if you have budget concerns, then you have to figure out where is your most important thing. And I always start with the data, because if you lose your data, you lose your company. So I'd look at, how you're doing data protection. So I'd start probably with data first, just because if you lose that, you're kind of gone. And then I'd move into tools like, a SIM type tool is your next thing to start looking at what's happening inside your network. So work out from your data out if you have really budget constraints.
Okay.
Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, if you have any views from your experience.
That would be a very good way to go. And unfortunately, when you have servers, systems, what have you, they put out an immense amount of logs. And without a SIM tool, you'll never be able to sift through those and see what actually happened. The key to a SIM, though, is it has to be configured well as well to send those alerts to you, to get somebody engaged, to know what happened. But that would be a great start.
Okay. So Mike, I want to stay with you on this next question that came in, because it dovetails off of something that you've really been talking about. So the question is, our company has consistently maintained security certifications, but you're talking about individual employees being more security aware. How do you get your employees to be more serious? Do you have any tips?
Certifications are one thing, but something that I've seen over the years is security awareness in itself maybe has fallen down, or it's not a priority, or it's some video that you watched once a year. It has to be something that is continually reinforced to you. Why would you click on that link? Why would you go to that site? What does that pop-up mean that just happened to me? And education is the key to everything when it comes to remote workers, internal workers, working with third parties, what have you. Certifications are nice, but once you have it, maybe you don't revisit the lessons that you learned.
Okay. So I think, Mark, I'm going to send this next one over to you. It seems like hackers and breaches are getting more creative, more innovative. I'm going to kind of restate this just a little bit, but how are companies like yours that are producing products, how are you being innovative and staying in front of that?
Yeah, that's really great. And the buzzword out there is XDR, for extended detection, that's out there. We are trying to mix artificial intelligence because, as Mike said, there's so much data you can't look at it all. You need help. You need that wingman. So we're really using some of our artificial intelligence, like Watson, you might have heard from when we did Jeopardy and all that. So again, real quick, artificial intelligence, we're really investing heavily to help companies that have too much data to look at.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Guys, I'm getting the wrap signal, so that is all the time that we have. Mark and Mike, thank you so much for taking time to come play in the Prolifics Sandbox.
Thank you.
Mark, you're welcome. As a little thank you to you, Mark, we have a little fun gift for you. Unfortunately, I don't have one to show it here, but it's an Innovation Sandbox Tervis Cup. So.
Oh, thank you. That's exciting. Cool. I love that.
So show it off. We want to see a picture. You don't want to, you put like a picture up on social media whenever you get it. Okay, show it off, and all your future video calls, we expect to see that Prolifics Innovation Sandbox mug. And to our audience, thank you very much for stopping by, and be sure to come back for our next Sandbox. The date isn't firm yet, but it's going to be in September. We'll have our data scientist, Dr. Mike Gonzalez. He's leading the way into open source database technology with a company called EDB. So follow Prolifics on Twitter or LinkedIn, or just check out our events webpage for the details as they come out. Until then, keep well and keep innovating.